was just an ordinary guy working the late shift at Starbucks. The night was quiet, and the only sounds were the soft hum of the espresso machine and the occasional chatter of a customer. It was one of those slow nights when I could catch up on my reading between making lattes and cappuccinos. As I flipped through the pages of my book, I couldn't help but notice a man sitting in the corner. He was alone, hunched over a laptop, his face shrouded in the glow of the screen. There was something about him that gave me an uneasy feeling, but I tried to shake it off. After all, I had seen my fair share of strange characters in the late night coffee crowd. The man seemed lost in his work, completely absorbed in whatever he was doing. I couldn't make out what was on his screen, but it didn't look like your typical office work. His fingers danced across the keyboard, his eyes fixed on the monitor. It was as if he was in a world of his own. I went about my business, making coffee and serving the few customers who had straggled in. The man in the corner remained engrossed in his work, oblivious to the world around him. But as the night wore on, I couldn't help but steal glances at him. Around midnight, the man finally closed his laptop and stood up. He made his way to the counter and ordered a black coffee. I tried to act casual, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I handed him his drink. His eyes bored into mine, and for a moment I felt as if he could see right through me. He took a sip of his coffee and then leaned in closer. "You know," he said in a hushed tone, "I've been working on something very important, something that could change the world." I forced a polite smile. "That's great," I replied, not wanting to encourage his delusions. But the man wasn't deterred. He leaned in even closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need your help," he said. "I need you to be a part of this." I was taken aback. "I'm just a barista," I stammered. "I make coffee and I'm not qualified for whatever you're talking about." The man's eyes narrowed and he leaned in so close that I could smell the coffee on his breath. "You don't understand," he hissed. "This is bigger than both of us. You have a role to play, whether you like it or not." I didn't know what to say. I was trapped behind the counter and the man's intensity was starting to frighten me. I just wanted him to leave and never come back. He finished his coffee and then suddenly turned and walked out of the Starbucks, leaving me feeling shaking and confused. I watched him through the window as he disappeared into the night, and I couldn't help but wonder what kind of trouble he was involved in. The next night, I was at my work, trying to put the strange encounter out of my mind. But as I served customers and made coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It was as if a shadow had fallen over the Starbucks, and I couldn't escape it. Then just as the night was winding down, the man walked in again. He had the same intense look in his eyes, and I could feel my heart racing as he approached the counter. "You thought about what I said?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. I nodded, not knowing what else to do. "I'm just a barista," I said again. "I don't know how I can help you." The man leaned in even closer, his face inches from mine. "You have a choice," he said. "You can be a part of something incredible, something that will change the world, or you can walk away and live your ordinary life." I didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew I didn't want to be involved in whatever he had in mind. I had a job to do, and I just wanted to go home and forget about this strange encounter. As the man left the Starbucks, I couldn't help but wonder what he meant by something incredible. It was all too bizarre, too unsettling. I tried to put it out of my mind, but it was impossible to escape the feeling that I had stumbled into something far beyond my comprehension. The next night, the man returned once again, and I knew that I couldn't ignore him any longer. He had a wild look in his eyes, and he was more insistent than ever. "Listen," he said, "I can't do this alone. I need you to be a part of my plan. You have a role to play, whether you like it or not." I didn't know what to say. I was terrified of this man and his strange agenda, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important at stake. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. The man smiled and it sent a chill down my spine. "I knew you would see a reason," he said. There's a meeting tonight, I need you to be there. I had no choice but to agree. The man gave me an address and a time, and I knew I would have to go, if only to find out what was going on. That night, I arrived at the address the man had given me. It was a worn out building, and I had no idea what to expect. But when I entered, I was greeted by a room full of people, all with the same intense look in their eyes. The man from Starbucks was there, and he wasted no time in explaining his plan. It was a complex scheme that involved hacking into government databases and exposing classified information. I had no idea how I had gotten myself into this, but I knew I had to get out. As the night went on, I became increasingly uneasy. The people in the room were fanatical in their devotion to the man and his cause, and I knew I had to escape before I became too deeply entangled. I made my way to the door and slipped out into the night. I had no idea where to go or what to do, but I knew that I couldn't be a part of this dangerous scheme. For days I lived in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder and wondering if the man from Starbucks would come looking for me. I knew that I had stumbled into something far beyond my understanding, something that could cost me my life. In the end, I made the decision to disappear, to leave my old life behind and start fresh. I moved to a new city, changed my name, and tried to forget about the horror I had witnessed. But I knew that I could never truly escape the man from Starbucks and his twisted agenda. The memory of that night haunted me, and I couldn't help but wonder what had become of the people who had been drawn into his dangerous plot. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into my new life, hoping that I had left the horrors of the Starbucks man behind. I got a job at a small bookstore, and the quiet routine was a welcome change from the chaos and danger I had left behind. But even as I tried to move on, the memory of that fateful night continued to haunt me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and the man from Starbucks was still out there, plotting and scheming. I had changed my parents and my name, but I knew that it was only a matter of time before he found me. I couldn't live in fear forever, and I knew that I had to find a way to confront my past. One night, as I was closing up the bookstore, I received a mysterious phone call. The phone on the other end was distorted, but there was no mistaking the menace in his words. "You thought you could run?" the voice hissed, "but you can't escape me." I froze in terror, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice on the other end of the line was the man from Starbucks, and he had found me. "What do you want?" I stammered. The voice on the other end chuckled darkly. "You know what I want," he said. "You can't hide forever." The phone call ended, leaving me shaking and terrified. I knew that I couldn't outrun this man, that he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. It was clear that I had no choice but to confront him head on. I began to research the man from Starbucks, trying to learn as much as I could about him and his twisted agenda. It was a dangerous task, but I knew that I had to gather as much information as possible if I was going to have any chance of stopping him. As I delved deeper into my investigation, I discovered that the man had a network of followers, all dedicated to his cause. They were scattered across the country, and it seemed that they would stop nothing to help him achieve his goals. I also learned that the man's plan was even more sinister and far-reaching than I had initially thought. He was working to destabilize governments, to expose classified information, and to plan chaos and discord. It was a plan that could have far-reaching consequences, that I couldn't let it go unchecked. Armed with this new knowledge, I knew that I had to find a way to stop the man from Starbucks and his dangerous agenda. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew that I was putting my life on the line, but I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I reached out to a journalist who had been investigating the man's activities, hoping that she could help me expose the truth. She was skeptical at first, but as I shared my story and the evidence I had gathered, she began to see the scope of the man's plan. Together we hatched a plan to expose the man and his network of followers. We gathered information, conducted interviews, and worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle of his sinister plot. But as we got closer to the truth, the man from Starbucks became increasingly desperate. He began to send threats, warning us to stop our investigation or face dire consequences. We knew that we were putting ourselves in danger, but we couldn't back down now. The man's plan had to be stopped, and we were the only ones who could do it. As we continued to dig deeper into the man's activities, we uncovered a web of corruption and deceit that stretched far beyond what we had initially imagined. It was a world of shadowy organizations, secret meetings, and dark alliances that were working together to bring about the man's vision of chaos and destruction. We knew that we were in over our heads, but we couldn't stop now. We had to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The man from Starbucks became increasingly frantic, and his threats escalated. He was willing to do anything to protect his plan, and we knew that our lives were in danger. One night, as we were working late in the newsroom, the man's followers attacked us. They burst into the office, armed with weapons and chilling determination to stop us. It was a boiling and terrifying encounter, and we fought for our lives. But we were outnumbered and outgunned, and it was clear that we were no match for the man and his followers. In the end, we were outpowered, and the man from Starbucks stood over us, a sinister smile on his face. "You should have known better than to cross me," he said, his voice dripping with malice. But just as it seemed that all hope was lost, a group of law enforcement officers burned into the room, guns drawn. They had been investigating the man and his activities, and they had finally caught up with him. A fierce firefight ensued, and in the chaos and confusion, we managed to escape. We knew that the man from Starbucks was finally in custody, and his dangerous plan has been foiled. It was a bittersweet victory, as we had lost friends and colleagues in the battle, but we had exposed the truth and stopped the man's sinister agenda, and that was a victory worth fighting for. In the end, I knew that I could finally put the horrors of that fateful night behind me. The man from Starbucks was behind bars, and his network of followers has been dismantled. But I also knew that the memory of that night would never truly leave me. It was a dark chapter in my life.